Hi folks, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. What you see in the vise is a fly I call the Magic Owl. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise then is a Hanak H333 barbless hook. This one's in black nickel and it's at size 10 on a fine wire. Now it says fine wire, but it's actually a fairly robust hook, this one. Now the thread I'm going to be using today is from UTC. It's 140 denier and it's yellow. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just catch a tiny little bit of wax onto the very end of my thread. I don't want a lot of wax on this because I don't want the thread to be discoloured. And I'm going to catch in just behind the eye, and initially I'm going to come down approximately half a centimetre, and then I'm going to come back up and stop a couple of millimetres before the eye of the hook. Come in and remove my waste. Next I'm going to add my CDC wing. Now there's many different ways of doing this. This is the way I do it. So what I've got here is a bag of, ignore the label, it's a bag of CDC, and I'm going to stick a little box up in this video to show you how I prepare the feathers. Now to save a bit of time, I've already stacked some of this CDC and it's ready to go on to the fly. So this takes probably the longest part of tying the whole fly is sorting out the CDC. Now if you want to go to the expense of buying the pre-stacked stuff, it's a great way of saving time, especially if you're just tying for yourself, and the expense is not an issue. So the length of the wing, sorry, I've digressed. The length of the wing is approximately 2 centimetres, and what I want to do is catch that in again, just in behind the eye. I'm going to catch it in fairly tight, and I'm going to lift the CDC wing to make sure that I've left enough room at the front. That's important because you want to cock this wing up later on. Now the next thing I want to do is take away this waste, and I don't want to have a straight cut. So what I'm going to do is come in at an angle, try not to cut the wing. That would not be good, and just get a nice taper going on with your waist, and this is going to help you with the body of the fly. So again, I'm going to come down now, and I'm putting quite a lot of pressure on this thread all the way down. Now one of the reasons I'm using UTC is it flattens out lovely, so you can tighten it up by spinning it clockwise. If you want to have it flat, you can spin it and it will flatten out lovely, especially the 140 denier. It's perfect. So I'm going to come down just as the hook starts to bend away there. Now for the rib of this fly, as the name would suggest, I'm going to be using some Magic Quill. Now I've got the card out the packet. It comes on a little card and it peels off. And what you get is a long strip with a black defining line down the side. Now with this size of fly, I don't want this very narrow bit at the bottom. So I'm going to take approximately the first 2.5 centimetres off of that tip. I'm then going to catch it in at the bottom with my thread flattened out, and then I'm going to come back up the fly. And what I want to do is create a nice taper. So I'm going to work with that. If your thread starts to spin up into tightness again, just unspin it, make sure it's nice and flat. There's no hurry here, so just it pays to just get your thread in the right condition to create this body. The body taper is all important with a fly. I'm nearly there, just it's starting to kick back on me, so I've just stopped and brought it down. Now, I'm fairly happy with the way that taper's looking. You can see it's opening right out there, which is great because it allows me to come back up in quite open turns to the thorax area. So I'm going to bring that up to the thorax area, and for good measure I'm going to put a half hitch in. And this will just stop my thread backing up or slipping over or going somewhere I don't want it to go. Little half hitch in the thread. Once you're content with the shape of your taper, you can then bring up your Magic Quill rib. Now on one side it's a little bit tacky, and what I want to do is bring it up with the tacky side down onto the body. My first turn is going to be just on the shank of the hook, and then I'm slowly but surely going to work my way up the body of the fly. Don't be overly worried if your first couple of turns slip down onto each other. That can happen. I don't lose any sleep over it. It just all adds to the effect of the fly. Now, as I come up, you can see the wider part of the Magic Quill is showing through the yellow thread, which looks quite impressive on its own. But there's another stage where we're going to make it look even better. Now, it's a fairly robust rib, so you could probably get away with just leaving it as is, but I always like to add a little bit of UV resin to the fly. It serves a couple of purposes. I think it makes the fly look a little bit better to the eye. A couple of turns in front of the material there. And also it protects the rib against trout's teeth. Now, rainbows aren't bad, but if you're fishing for brown trout, the teeth will soon cut through this after a few fish. So next then, I'm going to come in with some Solaris UV bone dry, and it's got this little handy brush which I find invaluable for applying UV resin. Just going to make sure I've got it nice and coated. Check your side, don't want any lumps or bumps. And that looks pretty good. Now, I said two reasons. There's also a third reason. Because you're adding a tiny little bit of weight to the fly by adding a little coat of resin here, it'll help it cock the fly up immediately. So once you've cast the fly out, it will almost immediately be fishing straight away. Now, very often when you're dry fly fishing, the takes come within the first 3 to 5 seconds of the fly hitting the water. It's almost instant, and there's many dry fly fishermen that advocate only having your flies on the water for up to 7 to 10 seconds before recasting. And it depends on the fishing situation, of course, but it's not a bad thing to follow. Okay, so I'm fairly content that that's cured. Next, I'm going to add some dubbing. Now, this dubbing is from Get Slotted. Now, it's a kind of, I think it's a blend I asked for in particular. I mean, it's a sort of off yellow seals fur type blend. Quite a wiry dubbing. Now, don't be afraid to go to artisan dubbing makers and ask for something specific. So Get Slotted did this for me. Andrew Ellis at Trout Stalker does quite a lot of bespoke dubbins. It's up to you. And of course you can get some readily available dubbins and simply blend them till you get what you're after. So I'm going to dub that on to my thread, and this is going to create the thorax. And then I can bring that round and create a nice thorax. I'm going to go back. It's quite, size 10 is quite big. This is designed for still waters. I dare say it would work well on rivers if you tied it in the smaller sizes. Then just a tiny bit of dubbing, which we're going to bring to the front of the wing. So I'm going to cock that wing up, and that space we left, which has shrunk a bit on mine, we're going to bring to the front, and that cocks the wing up just right. Now, before I whip finish, I'm simply going to add a tiny little bit of resin. And the reason for this is after I have whip finished the fly, what I don't want to do is come in with head cement or super glue. I want to be able to finish the fly by simply putting a UV torch over it. And I've nearly got away with that. It's not quite covered. Excuse my fingers. I'm just going to go in with the needle. Make sure I've cleared the eye. And then I can give it a quick zap with the UV torch, and that will finish the fly off nicely. Now, with a lot of dubbins, you might have to scruff it out with a brush. This one's particularly wiry, so what I'm going to do is come in and just take some of the real outliers away. And even that's not necessary. It's just me being pedantic about the fly. There we go then, that's the Magic Owl. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to give it a like, and I'll see you all next time.